Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all coping well and looking after yourselves. As I said before, last time, I'm reading to you. I keep saying as well, which is not very good when you're doing videos, is it? But we are where we are. So I'm reading to you from the first volume in Tales from a Scary Girl in anticipation of volume 2, which will be coming out later this year in time for Halloween, obviously. You may have noticed the first story, supernatural. Most of them are in here, to be fair. Most of them are supernatural. The second volume of stories are completely different. Obviously, they're still dark. This is me after all, but I like to keep it, to mix it up every so often. So the story I want to read to you today is called Innocence. Hello, what's your name? Emily looked up at the man through her tears. He was smiling at her, a warm smile, a friendly smile. Emily, she said as she gulped back a sob. Hello, Emily, my name's Jack, he said and extended his right hand towards her. It was a large hand, tanned and calloused, with short, blunt nails. He must work with his hands, Emily thought. Her gaze traced the thick blue veins that crisscrossed the back of his hand before they disappeared under the cuff of his jumper. She extended her own small, delicate hand from within the safety of her black fur muffler. She placed it in his, feeling its roughness against her own soft skin, and shook it formally. Do you mind if I sit down? Emily shook her head. He sat down next to her, careful to leave some space between them. Maybe so as not to frighten me, she thought, and smiled to herself. He rubbed his hands together vigorously and turned towards her. The air was particularly cold this November night. Are you all right? He said, his voice tinged with concern. Emily looked up into his eyes, so warm and friendly, and nodded. She wiped the remaining tears away with the back of her hand and sniffed. Here, use this, Jack said, pulling a clean handkerchief out of his pocket. Thank you. Emily put the handkerchief to her nose and inhaled. This smells nice, all clean and fresh, like the trees, she said, and smiled at him. He smiled back and glanced at his watch. What's the matter? Do you have to go already? Emily said, her eyes filling with tears. Hey, don't cry again, sweetheart. I don't have to go yet. I need to get you home first, don't I? Are you lost? Emily didn't answer him. She was watching the vein pulsating in the side of his neck. She reached out to touch it, to feel the blood move beneath her fingertips. Jack pulled back as though he had been scolded. Your hands are freezing. Put them back inside your muffler to keep warm. Emily smiled at this, but she did as he asked. She clasped her other hand inside the muffler. Both were ice cold, despite the warmth it provided. Emily, I asked you a question. Are you lost? Is that why you're crying? No, Jack, I'm not lost, she said, in a tone that belied her years. Then why are you here? I always come here. What, on your own? Yes, I like to come here. It's where I meet people. It's where I help people. What do you mean? Emily shrugged. People come to me to talk. It helps them. I help them. Just like I'm helping you, Jack. What do you mean helping me? I'm talking to you because I'm worried about you out here on your own so late at night. You might get hurt. Emily smiled at this. She liked Jack. His kindness and his innocence set him apart from the others. Maybe she'd keep him. He would be good company. Where do you live? It's time I took you home. She didn't answer him. He sighed and slumped back against the bench. Emily shuffled across to be closer to him. She could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Emily, answer me. Where do you live? Still she didn't answer. She wasn't listening to his voice. She was listening to his heart beating strongly in his chest. She was listening to his blood flowing through his veins. She was tracing the veins on his hand with her tiny finger. Jack shifted, as though dislodging an unwelcome pet, and placing his hands on her shoulders, turned her to face him. Emily, you should not be out here on your own in the freezing cold at this time of night. It's not safe. Anything could happen to you. Will you walk me home then? She said, pushing herself off the bench and holding her hand out to him. At last, Jack thought. What the hell was a kid her age doing in a park so late? Some people didn't deserve to be parents. He hoped she lived close by. He needed to be back around 10, but he also wanted to give her parents a piece of his mind. He looked down at her as she led him through the park. She was so tiny and delicate. She looked like an angel. He was so glad he'd found her. The last thing he needed was for her to get caught up in this. Tonight was his chance to catch him. 15 men had gone missing here, their bodies having been discovered a couple of days later in the bushes behind the bench he'd been sitting on. They'd been runners, walkers, dog owners, cyclists, single, married, fathers, grandfathers, teenagers. There was no real pattern, except they were all men, and that their bodies had all looked the same, grey and empty, a look of surprise evident in their eyes. Jack looked at his watch again, 9:30. It was going to be tight. The timing was crucial. It had to look natural. His radio crackled to life then, making them both jump. God, which part of no contact didn't they understand? Yeah, he said into the mouthpiece. He listened for a few minutes and then switched it off to make sure they didn't disturb him again. What was that? Emily said, staring up at him, her forehead creased in concern, her mouth set in a line. Just the station checking up on me. I'm a policeman, he said, hoping to put her mind at rest. Emily was not happy. She had liked Jack. Not now, though. Not now she knew what he was. Tears filled her eyes again. She had liked him so much, much more than the others, but he'd disappointed her. He'd made her sad, and she didn't like to feel sad. She stopped abruptly. I'm tired. Will you carry me? She stared up at him, a pout decorating her rosebud lips. Jack stooped to pick her up and was surprised by how heavy she was. She nestled into his shoulder, her arms around his neck, twining her fingers in his hair. How much further? Jack said. Oh, not much. There's a way out of the park, behind that bench up ahead. Jack picked up the pace and was soon wading through the long grass behind the bench. Wait a minute, he said, stopping and looking around. We're back where we started. As realization dawned, he felt a cold sweat swathe his skin and a hollow feeling appear in the pit of his stomach. He tried to drop her, but she was too quick for him. He winced as he felt her teeth puncture the delicate skin of his neck. He fought to push her away, but she was too strong for him. His neck felt like it was on fire, and the pulling sensation against his flesh was becoming unbearable. He felt the delayed kick of adrenaline and pushed against her with all his strength, but to no avail. She had clamped herself to him like a limpet. Exhausted by the effort and weakened by the loss of blood, he slumped to his knees. Emily let go of him and stepped back. Jack looked up at her, only to find her angelic features transformed into those of a monster. Blood smeared across her lily-white skin. He watched, helpless, as her delicate face returned to the angel he had met on the park bench, the angel of death. He could hear his pulse slowing, could feel his heart strain to find the strength to beat. The black and white dots started to form before his eyes, and his breathing became laboured and ragged. He had no reserves left to draw on. He let the darkness embrace him. Emily smiled to herself and returned to the bench. A little girl of 4 feet in height, with blonde ringlets, green eyes, and unnaturally pale skin. A little girl of 8 years of age, who was so much older. A little girl so full of innocence. I do hope you've enjoyed the little story of Emily, and I will be back next time with something else to tempt your palate, shall we say. Okay, until then, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.